Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a really cool concept called emergence. It's this fascinating idea that connects the tiniest things to the most massive systems, the simple stuff to the unbelievably complex. So let me start with a question that sounds kind of like a riddle, right? What in the world could possibly connect an ant colony, the culture inside your office, and the entire history of Hollywood? Well, the answer is emergence. And stick with me because by the end of this, you're going to see exactly how it all ties together. Okay, so what is emergence? Well, at its heart, it's when a whole bunch of simple things start interacting, and suddenly the system as a whole starts doing complex stuff, things you'd never predict just by looking at the individual pieces. You know the saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts? That's emergence in a nutshell, but it's often way weirder and more different than you think. Now, to really get our heads around this powerful idea, we're going to break it down. We'll use a framework that organizes emergence into 4 distinct levels, each one building on the one before it. Think of this table right here as our roadmap for the journey. We're going to start at type 1, the simplest form, and kind of level up all the way to type 4, where things get incredibly intricate. And with each step up, we don't just add complexity, we gain a whole new layer of explanatory power. So let's start our climb. Okay, here we are at level 1, simple networks. This is really the ground floor of emergence, where we see predictable, understandable wholes forming from a collection of simple, pretty much identical parts. So, in type 1, all the agents, the little individual components, they're all basically the same. The classic example is a sand pile. One grain of sand is, well, just a grain of sand. But as you add more and more, they interact in a very simple way. One just pushes on the next, and together they create a sand pile, a structure with a predictable shape and slope. The cause and effect is purely upward. The parts create the whole. And even though it looks complex, you can still analyze it and pretty much predict the outcome. And in the business world, this helps us understand things like collective action. How do a million individual customer decisions add up to create a predictable market trend? That's type 1 emergence right there.
All right, let's level up. We're moving on to type 2, and this is where we get to that famous saying. This is where the whole becomes truly different from the sum of its parts. And honestly, this is where things start to get a little wild.
The big idea here is something called qualitative novelty. What that means is the new structure that emerges isn't just a bigger version of its parts, like our sand pile was. No, it's something entirely new. It's so different, in fact, that you literally need a new vocabulary, sometimes a whole new scientific field, just to talk about it. For instance, you can't describe a company's competitive advantage using only the language you'd use for an individual employee's psychology. It's a different level of reality.
This here shows the result perfectly. You see, simple systems often follow that familiar bell curve, a normal distribution where most things cluster around the average. But type 2 emergent systems, they often create something totally different, a Pareto distribution or a power law. Instead of a predictable average, you get a system with a few massive winners, like one Walmart, and then a super long tail of millions of smaller competitors. It is a fundamentally different kind of world.
And for managers, this is where we start to see emergent strategy. You've got all these individual talents and interactions happening, the company's human capital, and somehow, out of all that messy, day-to-day action, a coherent corporate strategy emerges that really only exists at the level of the firm itself.
Okay, prepare for a bit of a mind bender now. At type 3, we introduce a whole new direction of influence. It's not just the parts affecting the whole anymore. Now, the whole starts to push back on the parts.
This is a concept called downward causality. What happens is the structure that emerged from the bottom up, it actually gains its own kind of power. It starts to push back down, constraining and influencing the very agents that created it in the first place. This is a massive leap in complexity. So how does this actually work? Well, it's a feedback loop. Step 1, individuals interact with each other. Step 2, out of all those interactions, an emergent structure is formed. Think of things like group norms or unspoken rules. And then, and this is the absolute crucial step, that new structure, that way we do things around here, it starts to put pressure on the individuals to conform. This changes how they'll behave in the future, and boom, you've got a self-reinforcing cycle.
If you've ever started a new job and almost immediately felt this unspoken pressure to fit into the existing company culture, guess what? You've experienced type 3 emergence firsthand. That culture was created by past employees, and now it's actively shaping you.
We've made it. We have arrived at the top of our typology, the most complex, the most powerful level of emergence.
This is where we add that uniquely human element into the mix: purpose.
So at type 4, you've got everything from the lower levels, upward causality, downward causality, all those feedback loops. But now the agents aren't all the same, they're all different. And even more importantly, they have goals, they are purposeful, and, this is the real game changer, they can actually change their goals based on what the system itself is doing.
And the result of all this is a system that's in constant motion. It's this incredible dance of multi-level cyclical causality that never ever fully settles down. Trying to trace a single cause for any given outcome becomes basically impossible because everything is influencing everything else all at once across all the different levels.
So think about it. How do you explain the rise of the film industry or the global takeover of Starbucks? You can't just point to one thing. It's a massively complex interplay between technology, changing consumer tastes, individual creative choices, big corporate strategies, cultural shifts, all of it feeding back on each other constantly. That, right there, is a type 4 problem.
So we've climbed all 4 levels. Why did we go through all that trouble? I mean, what's the big payoff for understanding this framework? It really comes down to this: explanatory power. As this chart shows so clearly, when you move up the ladder from type 1 to type 4, your ability to explain the complex, messy, real-world stuff, it just increases dramatically. You go from being able to explain a simple sand pile to actually understanding the evolution of entire industries.
And this quote from the source material just nails it. This is the key takeaway. By figuring out the correct level of emergence for the problem you're looking at, you get a much more powerful, a much more valid and useful explanation. It's about using the right tool for the right job. So I'll leave you with a question to chew on. What level of emergence is shaping your team, your company, or even your entire industry right now? Is your team's dynamic just a simple type 1 network? Is your company's culture a self-reinforcing type 3 loop? Or is your whole industry a chaotic, purposeful type 4 system? Because once you start seeing these levels, you really do start to see the world in a completely new light.